You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
You may not be able to handle the truth, but these guys can. Welcome to the Long for Truth Show.
Heretic hunters.
Hey, what do you think of these guys?
I think they're damned and on their way to hell, and I don't think there's any redemption for them. You stink, frankly. That's the way I think about it.
Hello and welcome to the Long for Truth Show. My name is Dan Long, and where this podcast is going to go, not really sure. I've got like 3 or 4 articles I want to read, but we'll have to see how things go. So, be back in a moment. Well, it's been almost a week and a half, I think. Has it been that long? Yeah, I think it has. I think it's been about a week and a half since we've posted our last podcast. Wow, just been a really hectic week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever. Steve and I try to be consistent. We try to put up a couple of podcasts a week up. We try to do one on Sunday, record one. And by the way, we will, Lord willing, be together this Sunday. I think Steve got some equipment issues taken care of, and I've got some computer issues that I think are going to be taken care of in the next week or so. And so we'll be able to get together more consistently. It's been tough, and so that's why we've been doing the solo podcast and trying to be consistent on Spreaker and trying to, at the very least, put up one podcast a week. When we do try to do 2 a week. I try to record, what's today? Today is Thursday. I try to record on Thursday mornings and post it Thursday mornings. And we try to record on Sunday and post it for either Sunday night or Monday morning. So Mondays and Thursdays is how we try to be consistent with Long for Truth, but that doesn't work all the time. In case you guys didn't know, Steve and I are separated from, we're separated for about 560 miles or so. Steve lives in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I live in Howes Cave, New York, in upstate. And it's tough to get together. The only time we can get together is through Skype. Now, when we first started doing the podcast in October of 2012, and if you go back and you can listen to the first podcast that we did, totally different. I mean, I'll tell you how it happened. I went down to visit him, took my boys with me. We went down, just kind of a man thing, left the wife at home. And the boys and I went down and visited Uncle Stephen and Aunt Faith. And, not even intending to even, podcast was not even in my mind anyway. So we get down there, and we just started talking about different things. And Steve said, we ought to really start doing a podcast. We'd already put up a blog. We had a Facebook page. And Steve said, we ought to do a podcast together. And I think there were a couple of host sites that we looked at, and we found Spreaker to be the best one. And so we said, let's just see how it works. So I remember we were sitting in a little coffee shop in North Carolina. I think it was called Muddy's. I think that's what it's called, Muddy's. And we were just sitting together at a table with our computers and just trying to figure out what we were going to do the podcast on. I think we did, as a matter of fact, we did it on Justification, a couple of podcasts there. And we did it, our first podcast, we did sitting on his front porch with our iPad using the Spreaker app. And that's before they even had an iPad Spreaker app. That was back in October of 2012. Now they've got an iPad Spreaker app. That's the iPhone Spreaker app that we were using. And so we did it there, and it was fun. And had no idea that we were going to do. I think we've got like 53. I think this is the 54th episode that we've got put up. And we say this all the time. We are not professionals by any stretch of the imagination. Not by not by any stretch of the imagination. We are just not professionals, but we have a lot of fun doing it, and we really do care about the truth, and we want to do our part to get that to get the truth out there. And so, saying all that, it's been about, like I said, a week and a half. And for you guys that don't know, we have a lot of things that we are trying to balance in our lives. I know Steve's getting ready to have another baby, and him and his him and Faith are getting ready to have another baby, and so they've got that. Steve also preaches and does street ministry for Albemarle Reformed Baptist Church. And I'm involved in my church as well, and I have ministry that I try to do on the side as well, street ministry and other things in family. And my secular job, I mean, I'm working anywhere from 50 to 60 hours a week. And so to try to balance all of that, plus do a podcast every week, really, it's tough. It really is. But we want to be consistent. And we try to be consistent. We try to, like I said in the beginning, put up 2 podcasts a week. So this will be our first one in, like I said, a week and a half, I think. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is not going to be a long podcast, but I've got 3 articles I want to read. One article is kind of comical. It's by Barnabas Piper, John Piper's son. It's from the Barnabas blog, and it's called "Stop Calling Your Wife Hot," which is it's relevant for if you've ever listened to in any seeker-friendly pastor, especially. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to sermons by seeker-friendly pastors or by these pastors in these big mega churches, and they're always calling their wives hot. And I don't know if Barnabas Piper was actually referring to that, but he was referring to Christians, saying, hey, my wife hot. So it's just an interesting little bit of comedy there. And then I want to go over to what else did I have in mind? There was a hymn. You've all heard the hymn. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. And Tim Challis has an article about that hymn, and you might find it quite interesting. It might not be what you have thought it was, especially if you're struggling with the whole Arminian thing of free will in that song. It's a really, really good historical. It's a good article on where that song came from, and like I said, it might surprise you. And then finally, I want to look at a Joseph Prince article, a devotional that he wrote, and talking about how God's word does not return void, but he doesn't mean what Isaiah says in Isaiah 55. What he means is healing and prosperity. So we're going to look at those 3 articles. Let's go ahead and get started now. I gotta do some finagling here with this thing. Let's see. Let's go over and start out with Tim Challis's blog. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna hit show. By the way, I've got so much stuff. I've got a file that I've created that has the file is just called podcast. And what I do is when I see an article or I see a video or I see something that might be good to use for a podcast, I'll just throw it in the podcast file. And I've got stuff going way back. I mean, I've got stuff in there going way back, but I've got to dig through it. I've got to start deleting stuff, and there's one article in there though that I did want to get to eventually, and that it's I'd say is it back from April maybe? Back in April. It's on evil. Did God create evil? And that's something that I wanted to cover. But I've got so much stuff, and the stuff just builds up and piles up. And so I've got so much stuff in there that I've got to go through. I've got to start deleting. I've got to start looking and say, okay, do I want to keep this or do I not? But I've got a couple in here. Now these are relatively new. Relatively new. You see how backed up I am? I can't even tell whether they're new or old, but this is, let's see, the date on this one is yesterday's date. That's right. I saved it yesterday as I went through my emails. But it's yesterday's date. It's May the 20th. I was getting ready to say March. May the 29th. Let me get my let me just get myself together here. May the 29th. And the title is called, it's from the Barnabas Piper blog. Now, I know I said Tim Challies. Tim Challies links to this blog. But it's from the Barnabas Piper blog. And it's just a little, it's not a long article at all. It's just a little article. And it's called, Quit Calling Your Wife Hot. I don't know if you've listened to pastors, or even maybe your own pastor does it, but man, it is irritating to hear a pastor from the pulpit say how hot his wife is. I know that sounds weird. I know it does, but I have heard it myself. And one example is Judah Smith when he was talking to a group of young people, and he talked about his wife and how a certain song usually puts his wife in the mood, if you know what I mean. And now these are supposed to be men of God that are speaking this way from the pulpit. And even though this is kind of I don't know if it's meant to be comical, but it certainly was funny when I was reading it. Even though this is somewhat comical, it still is, a serious thing. Husbands are supposed to love their wives. They're supposed to respect their wives. They're supposed to treat their wives the way Christ treats the church. And they're not supposed to use their wives for some kind of, to get some kind of applause or laughter or something out of the audience. It's not respectful. It's not good. It's wrong. But anyway, let me just read this from the Barnabas blog titled, Quit Calling Your Wife Hot. And this is what he says. I saw a tweet from a friend last week that said, quote, if I hear one more Christian guy call his wife hot every time he talks about her, I'm going to throw a plate at the wall. I suggested that he actually throw the plate at the guy calling his wife hot, or smoking hot, for that matter, tongue-in-cheek, of course. Maybe it would knock some sense and normalcy into them. Fellas, calling your wife hot to other people is awkward. We can't agree with you. That would be really weird. We can't disagree with you. That would be really mean. And ignoring you is rude, but it's probably our best option in this case. Do you really want us trying to determine if your wife is, in fact, hot? I'm glad you think she's a 10. You should. But calling attention to her hotness doesn't honor her as much as it creates an opportunity for others to judge, and that's just awkward. It's also subjective. You think your wife is hot. In fact, you think she's the hottest, but what if other guys don't? Do you really want to raise that issue? And if they do you really want to know or to bring it to their minds? Your wife is your standard of beauty, or at least she should be. But every time you call her hot, which refers exclusively to physical beauty, unlike beautiful or lovely or amazing, all of which can encompass personality and character, you're making her a standard of beauty for others. You are talking about her objectively. That is to say, you're objectifying her. Bad idea. It's a great thing to honor your wife publicly. It's good for people to know your devotion to her and how much you love her. It's good for people to know you are attracted only to her and want her only, but keep the hotness talk inside the walls of your home. That's between you and her. Tell her she's smoking hot all you want, but don't tell the rest of us, because it does no good for anyone. And that's the end. That's the end of this article. I told you it was a short article, but it's really relevant because, I mean, that's exactly what you hear often from the pulpits of these mega pastors in these big churches. Let's move on now over to the Cripplegate blog. Now, this is a blog article called "Why We Sing I Have Decided to Follow Jesus." And this post was posted on May the 29th, and it's by Jesse Johnson. And as soon as this thing, there we go, I'm going to pop it in reader mode here, and I'm going to